Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and we're going to do a nice painting using some little different techniques. This is Canson XL 11 by 15. And, as I go along on this journey, my difference between maybe the way I work and the way other people work is I don't just use the same products or the same materials every single time. I'm constantly looking for that. What if I do this, or what if I do that? So in this case here, I'm just kind of washing the paper down with just kind of getting like a yellow, orangey color on here. Whether or not that transforms, I never know. As I go along, I may want to make a change, add a little bit of white. And as you know, I incorporate a lot of different things. I've been incorporating gouache and, just different materials as I go along. And in this one, I thought I would experiment with using sea sponges. Now, I'm not the first person, obviously, to use sea sponges, but I am incorporating sort of a watercolor gouache effect using the combination. And the purpose is to get brighter colors and to get more random effects. Now, I'm just going to add some blue to the sky. I'm just trying to get something going here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I know I kind of want a floral sort of a landscape. So with that, I'm going to use... Now, you can use regular watercolors and sponge. You can do any approach you want. When you watch my videos, the idea really for me that I'm looking for you is not to inspire you to, start painting, but not only that, but to... take away maybe one or two tidbits. When I first started painting, my goal was to learn how to paint, and I would follow along exactly maybe how that person was doing it. And as I moved along, I started thinking, what can I pick up? Is there something I've missed, a technique that I've missed? So now I bring those things to you. Now, see, I've already taken the sponge. This is just a what happens if I kind of thing. Did it for the clouds. Now, it kind of has an unusual look to it. For me, I'm going to need to blend this out a little bit. So I'm just going to blend this white into the color that I've already put on there, just to get a cloudy sort of a background. I'm just taking a soft, dry brush. You've seen me do this before. Now, that's one thing I don't see, or I haven't seen anybody do with regards to water and color and gouache, is a blending technique. So I find that like a thicker paints, which the gouache typically are, gouache paints are not runny. They're usually pretty thick. So they're creamier, and you can kind of blend those in by using a soft, dry brush. So to do that, you're going to need like a couple extra hake type brushes to the side so that you can do that. And it's a light touch. And you can see how that looks in the sky there. You could leave little tidbits of blue, experiment with different patterns. Now here I come back with this sponge again. Now, this is interesting because you can try this a variety of different ways. For this, I thought I would start out and I would use a darker color to start. Now, typically with watercolor, you go from light to dark. So I thought I would put the dark in and then over the top. I kind of got this idea. I was redoing my countertop in my kitchen, and it was one of these ones where you can sponge on. It's acrylic, of course, but you would roll out the counter black, and then it had 3 different shades of brown that you put over the top. Kind of brown, more earth tone colors. And I thought that would be very interesting if you tried to incorporate that into a painting. So because that one started with the dark, I'm starting with the dark. But you don't have to. You can do the light and then go to dark. So you can go in an opposite direction with it. Now here I'm coming with some yellow and green. Now, this is going to evolve as I go, so don't take this as, exactly how, it's going to turn out. And you can stop anywhere you want. But you can do this over the whole entire surface of the paper and just keep practicing and sponging different techniques, different color combinations, and so forth. Now, here's the sponge. This is a sea sponge. You can see how porous it is. And if you get a big one, you can rip off little pieces of it and then just kind of dab. But what you're going to want to do is have like a palette or a piece of surface paper plate, something next to you, and dab it so that it's really on the sponge good, and then it's not just so heavy. And you can see I've taken like some pink and some crimson red, and I've mixed that, and I'm just kind of dabbing that on. So you don't have to use a brush really at all. You can use different things to come up with this technique. Now you can see here on my shaky camera, because I'm pushing and doing this, I've tried taking some purple. And of course you can come up with different, you know, you could mix this in advance and have 3 different colors that you think will work well together. But I really think it's best to sponge the colors in from light to dark, ultimately, is the conclusion that I've come to. Because you can always come back with the lighter colors again, especially if you're using gouache here as I am. Because they're opaque, they're going to overprint or overpaint over the top. And here I just thought I'd put in, I'm going to use my fan brush, and I'm just putting in some evergreens, some pines here. Again, just going for shapes here. Shapes against the background. This is indigo I'm using, by the way, one of my favorite colors. Indigo is interesting because it's like a dark, it's like Payne's gray, but with either a more reddish or more bluer vibe to it. Payne's gray is almost, from even most of the brands, it's almost just too black. It needs something more in there. And I think that's why a lot of artists you don't see use Payne's gray too much. Ron Ranson was a big user of Payne's gray, but I don't believe he ever just, you know, used it straight. Always it kind of added it to something else as kind of a darkener. Now, Daniel Smith makes a product called Neutral Tint, which is a dark color, but it doesn't really have that black quality. It just kind of, it's for darkening paint. So I'm just using the fan brush going in, kind of shaping this. I was thinking a path here. Initially, I was thinking a path, and then I thought, well, it's a little boring, so I ended up going with a waterfall. As you will see as we unfold this painting. Had a viewer recently messaged me and asked my thoughts on getting an easel. And it actually was a tougher question than I thought. I use an easel here, as you can see. It's really a personal, kind of the way you work tool. I have a few different kinds, and I also have a work table. And if you would like to sit at like your table, you can use a board and put something underneath if you want to keep it very inexpensive. If you want to feel like you're an artist and you want to get the box easel, those are nice too. A lot of these were made, though, for putting canvas on. So there's kind of that middle piece that goes up and down to secure your canvas, and then whatever board you put on there will rock back and forth a little bit. So if you want a really flat surface, you can get one of those boards that you can change the angle on, or a table, but you're still going to need to tape it to the table. I don't like taping my paper down because it buckles a little bit. With the clips on the corners, you can unclip it and kind of reclip it. So here I am, I'm coming back in with this sponge and just kind of working with those different colors there. Just doing some blending here. Again, I'm thinking of a path coming through there. But my real purpose in this painting was to work with these sponges and just to see how that would work. And in my background there, I added a little bit of white. I thought that yellow was a little too stark. Now, although gouache is opaque, when you use water, it becomes somewhat transparent. Unless you're like rolling it on, it's not really going to cover like if you were sponging it. So I just kind of wanted a very milky, yellowy background, trying to get that atmospheric effect. Now, I've noticed with the trees, and you'll see me do this, is if you take the exact color you did your trees with and you add just a little bit of white to it, it'll leave this kind of opaque look that's not really part of the color, and it'll give a dimension to the tree, as you can see here as I work these out. And I've tried highlighting them with yellow before, and sometimes it's just the effect is just a little too garish for me. I want this to look like it's kind of going in the distance here. Rip off another piece of this sea sponge. Sorry for my arm block there. And then I'm going to go ahead and, as you can see, very bright pink. And you could use those to move paint around. Again, just pressing that in. You can see how you go over the top. There's a little bit of purple there, a little bit of pink. If you're dabbing that paint on white paper, even though it is opaque, I do believe your luminosity of the paint is going to be higher. So that's why I say to work from light to dark. It's a hard concept because typically you work from dark to light in a lot of different formats. I used to paint figures, like model figures, and you had to go from dark to light. So you would start off with a base color. Actually, you start off with a base color. Then you would do like a dirty wash, and that would settle into the eye sockets, nose, cheeks, and stuff like that. And then you would dry brush over the top and highlight all of the highlights. But of course, with a two-dimensional canvas or paper, you can't take advantage of any raised areas like with a rendered face and a plastic or vinyl model. And you see I've sponged in a little bit of green. I'm putting in a little more of the red down here. And you want to try to, if you're going for some distance, to kind of dab larger blobs, if I should say blobs, the closer it is to you, and then smaller as it moves away. So you might find yourself bunching up your sponge to a smaller, squeezing it to a smaller piece. Just taking my fan brush here and refining these trees a little bit. I want them to stand out a little bit more, so I'm going a little bit darker with them. I just picked up a little bit of that white too, to make that dimensional effect of the trees I was talking about. For this, I was just trying to put some darks in between to kind of bring back those shadows. And I want to see what it looks like with this mat on here. This kind of gives me an idea, kind of closes the window, so to speak, to kind of just get your brain and eyes to focus. So once I've come up with some ideas, and I'll take the mat away. And I use an old mat, by the way. I've mentioned this before, but I've spoiled enough of these mats getting paint on them. So I always just throw off one with a lot of gunk on it up there till it's all fully dry. Then you have a little bit of wet paint on your easel and you mess up the bottom of the mat. And this is my spray, by the way. This is my yellow spray if I wanted to get a little more color on there. And you've seen me use this before. And if you haven't, I dissolve about an inch of paint from the tube in a water bottle with a spray nozzle on it. And I just gave that a quick dry, which I edited so you wouldn't have to sit through the hair dryer. So I'm ripping off a little more sponge here. I want to get just a little bit more going here. And rip it off until you have like a little pattern that you like. See, I just want to get that up into the tree area a little bit. You got to leave a little bit of that background. You don't want to overdo this. I'll put the mat back on. And you can see it's looking pretty interesting. Just refining those trees a little bit. Just trying to get those trees to contrast nicely against the background. Could have left well enough alone, I suppose. When you're sitting there in front of your painting and you just keep looking at it and looking at it, and sometimes you just do too much. Something objectionable up there that got on the paint, on the painting. Just blending in a little bit more of that white to get rid of that. Kind of blending in a little bit of color in the background there. Make it look like there's something way out there in the distance. And there's that light white effect I told you about. See how just right it gives you that, the branches there. Okay, so I'm going to bring the mat back. And just for me, I mean, the path with the sky isn't doing it. It just looks kind of like a strange divider. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little waterfall down the middle instead of what I do have. Apologies to those who are liking the way it looks now. But I'm going to take some of my indigo and I'm just going to lay out the base for, so it's darker when I lay my water on top. And then we'll get out the white gouache. Then using the bristles of the fan brush, just kind of make that arc. Pull over and down. So you can see each little bristle. And then a little bit of the splash, and then maybe another little downstroke. Look like it's coming down the hill. And just a little splashing. Just getting it till I'm happy with it. Now you will notice real quick sometimes after I put the white on, I'll give it just a little spray, like of yellow, like of reflecting the sky. So it's not stark white. Okay, once again we'll put the mat back on. And I think that looks pretty good. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you learned about using the sponges and you had a few takeaways from this video. I appreciate your support, comments, and everything else. You can always visit and keep up with my latest news and videos by going to my website, joemenza.com. And I will see you next time.